All right, I think we're live. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm really happy to be here with you. My name is Deborah. I'm a tech reporter at Les Echos, which is a French economic newspaper. I'm here with some amazing guests. Josephine, you're the founder of TechFugees. TechFugees is an organization that empowers displaced people with technology. Do you want to say just one more sentence about TechFugees, maybe?
Okay. Yes, we are what we said, TechFugees. Basically, I'll add one sentence is we do it with displaced people. We don't do it just for them.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Earlier, you're the founder and managing director of Vested World, a VC fund that invests in developing countries. Same here. Do you want to tell us a little more about you or your fund in a few words?
Yeah. Similar to Josephine, we invest in really what we think are exceptional entrepreneurs looking to help build economies and make them self-sustaining.
Great. And Benjamin, you're an inclusive design lead. You're going to tell us what that means at Airbnb. So if I understood well, your job is to make sure that Airbnb is accessible to everyone.
Absolutely. My team, is called the anti-discrimination team, and we've really focused on finding ways to ensure that our product is, as you said, accessible, that it is universal, and that it helps historically underinvested or underrepresented groups use the platform equally. Gives them equitable access to amazing experiences. Yeah, I'm a product designer leading a product team, as well as our inclusive design training across the board.
Amazing. So I just wanted to give you a few figures before we begin. It's figures I have from the European State of Tech that is done by the VC, the British VC fund Atomico every year. They say in 2019, 84% of founders identify as white, so European founders. Only 0.9% identify as Black, African, Caribbean. And from another figure, from every $100 invested, $92 go to startup funded only by men. I could go on and on and on, but every data shows basically that the tech world today is built by white, well-educated men. This is a problem for many reasons, and we're gonna talk about that. You guys have all been working on solving that problem, and to begin, I wanted to ask you to give us an example of a precise situation where you saw that the lack of inclusiveness in tech was an issue. Maybe Josephine, you want to start with that?
Okay. Well, when we started TechFugees, the idea was very much like we have, it was during the summer of 2015 where a lot of displaced people came to Europe at the shores and a lot of people felt like powerless to help. And that's when the tech community in London gathered thinking, every day we are building technologies to get pizzas delivered or to get a taxi in 2 minutes. But we seem to be unable to really help the people that need the most help right now, depending on, our needs are very futile right now. And so it was very much a reaction to, why are we spending so much time fixing our very futile, superficial needs compared to really understanding the needs of other people and doing technology with and for them. If I may, I'd like to share one story that illustrates, I think, the best what we tried to do at first. So it was the first hackathon of TechFugees. We didn't know if tech could do anything, but we wanted to try and give it a try. And so a team of Googlers with the other guys at the hackathon came together and said, most of the people that come to Greece have no idea of geography. They think that they take a taxi and that it will take them to Germany. They also don't know where to find food, shelter, or where to find any information. Some of the Googlers, obviously, because they are classifying the world information, were like, that's a problem we know. We know how to sort of categorize information, so we'll do this. What they did is they did a website thinking that most people would come on their Android phone, and they did it with a black background so that it wouldn't use so much battery and to get on. And so it was a simple URL, refugeeinfo.com, and you could get information in different languages. But you'll see where they failed is, even though they had it all right, they didn't understand that the very people they were trying to help didn't register the information the same way and access the information the same way. They had smartphones or Android phone, whatever, but they didn't go onto Chrome and put a URL. So what they had to do is they had to go on the ground and they had to create a splash page. You know, when you go on an airport and then a Wi-Fi pops up so you can access the Wi-Fi. And what they realized, all the refugees or displaced people arriving wanted to connect with their families to say, I've made it. I'm alive.
Of course.
And so they would go on the Wi-Fi and the first page that would appear would be that website. And so their traffic jumped from 2,000 of people to the hundreds of thousands, understanding the need and the usage of their very users. And I could go on about this project because it turned out that the website was not the most interesting product. It was very much linking the website to a chatbot on Facebook that was the most important, because refugees didn't want to have information on a website that they couldn't trust. They wanted to have information given by someone. And so what they did was to go for a social enterprise called Nata Kalam, who delivers language courses delivered by refugees. And basically, refugees are answering in the language of the person to give them access to information. And so they use a Facebook chatbot. So I think you see here that even though they thought like they have Android phones and they don't have much battery and all they want is information, you had to involve the very people you're trying to help to get it right in terms of usage and delivering the need.
We have a lot of enthusiasm from the audience for your project. Hello, Sylvie, Negar, Farah. Thank you so much for reacting to that. If you have any questions, guys, just ask them. We'll try to answer them as soon as we can. Benjamin, I know you have a very personal experience living discrimination in tech. Do you want to tell us about it, maybe? I think it was in Chile a few years ago.
Yes. The shorter version of the story is that I was looking to start doing a lot of traveling around the world. And so in looking for places to stay, I decided to turn to home sharing, Airbnb, as one of the primary platforms. And I had reached out in the way that a lot of guests do, where you make a list of places to stay. You check that the dates are free. You send a reservation request and a message saying, hi, my name is Benjamin. Can I stay? And I was... there's actually a couple of different experiences. On one occasion, I was just rejected repeatedly, which creates this kind of weird environment because I'm a verified user. I've got great reviews. I've got the money to pay. The calendar is free. So why am I being rejected? And this really ties into this kind of broader problem that Airbnb had in 2016, where Black guests were less likely to be accepted when booking a home. So they were less likely to be accepted by primarily white hosts when booking a home. And it's this gap, this experience gap. And, a lot of different underrepresented groups or historically marginalized communities experience the same kind of inequitable access in the tech products that we create. And so my kind of entry into this space was when Airbnb reached out. I'd done a lot of writing about cross-cultural design, and they said, we're creating a team to start tackling disparate impact, all forms of discrimination, whether it be race-based, gender-based, ableism, ageism. We need to find a way to ensure that every group is able to use our platform and be able to bring their authentic selves when traveling. And so, this is something that I believe tech companies, we all have a role to play in building, not just for, but with the communities that we're seeking to serve. Because when we do that, we actually end up creating better products and services. And when we don't do that, that's where we see, any number of things in the press. For example, up until last year, if you were to Google 3 Black teenagers, you would get a lot of mugshots. Whereas if you were to Google 3 white teenagers, you get stock photos of happy families. And so that exists because we more often than not, we have homogenous teams, well-intentioned, like very well-intentioned teams, but homogenous teams building tech products that scale to millions. Snapchat has released blackface filters and yellowface filters, another series of issues and challenges that have come out. And we see, a lot of apps, for example, Uber and Lyft. And again, this is not to name and shaming these companies in any way. They're just examples of disparate impact that often having a homogenous team feeds into. And so if we can find a way to bring more representation to the table when we're creating and we're building, we end up creating products and services that truly resonate for everyone.
All right. Euler, same questions for you. So you have the eye of the investor. So you stand from a pretty different point of view. Any experience you want to share with us about this discrimination caused by tech products?
Well, I think at a high level, I think it's worth pointing out that when I first started investing in 2014 under a formal structure, the disparity in funding going to companies based in sub-Saharan Africa versus the funding available to entrepreneurs in a more developed market like the U.S. was multiple oceans wide. I think at the time, something around $100 million was invested in early stage companies in Africa, whereas in the U.S. that number was closer to $75 billion. And this is a continent that's much larger than the U.S., huge market opportunity. And some of the things that we were seeing were really basic problems that have been addressed elsewhere that hadn't been solved in these countries. So, for example, one of the first companies we invested in was providing solutions to utility companies to help them increase the availability of energy to people in Nigeria. Nigeria, one of the largest countries in Africa, but most, from a population standpoint, but most people in the country don't have reliable access to energy. They're using generators, which are expensive to run and also extremely pollutive and threatening the environment. And these guys were working with utility companies who, even though they were generating power, about 60% of that power was being lost before it got to the grid. And then an additional 40% was lost due to this just issues along the transmission lines, people stealing power. And so they were able to work with those utility companies to help them reduce their losses and increase the amount of power that was being supplied to people, increase the utilities' ability to bill appropriately so that they could actually earn revenue and increase the capacity and energy they're able to provide to people. So that's just an example of how you can leverage technology that's not necessarily cutting edge. It's stuff that's already been out there, but because of the lack of funding available, companies like that are not able to scale their solutions as quickly as they could otherwise do to not only help people in these markets, but also help investors and businesses that they're working with.
Very interesting. Saish is actually asking the exact question I wanted to ask you guys, so it's really great. She asks, so she's a co-founder and CEO, and she says, can inclusivity as a problem be solved only by having representation from all social strata? I think it's really interesting because, we need more diversity in tech. Of course we do. But is it enough to create more inclusive and accessible products? I don't know who wants to start on this.
I would say that, number one, I would have to call out that I don't think inclusivity is a problem that ever can be solved. Like, your product or service will never be inclusive, end of. It's just, we always want to be moving directionally towards including more and more people and making it more and more inclusive. So there isn't an endpoint, but to kind of call, to really the core of the question, is representation enough? Not at all. But to me, it is table stakes. It is at the very bare minimum, we have to be doing that, because that's what unlocks all of our abilities to actually bring more inclusive practices and products and services and cultures actually to life. So to me, it is the beginning. It's not the end.
Yeah, very interesting.
I totally agree with Benjamin. It's the bare minimum. If you don't have it, then you can't have the idea of inclusion being brought in. But then, more than the representativeness, then you go beyond is the processes and the designing of processes within. Because you could have a good, beautiful picture of people from very different colors and different backgrounds. What are the processes inside for all of these people to just be empowered to take action for the product to be inclusive? And we will never reach inclusion. Indeed, it's like you will serve a target market. So.
And I agree with that. And something really, oh, please go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just something I wanted to double down because I really agree with, especially a specific point that Josephine had mentioned, that even if you have this picture perfect arrangement, like if the right incentives are not in place, you can have a very diverse team, but you have the wrong metrics incentivizing the wrong choices. And in that instance, you may have all the diversity in the room, but you're incentivized to make a choice that maybe prioritizes immediate business growth over long-term wellness of a community. And so you can end up with a scenario where you think you're doing the right thing. You think you have all the right people at the table, but without, as Josephine said, the right processes and the right metrics and incentives in place, things can still go awry.
And I agree with everything everyone has said. And I think just the one thing I would add is at the end of the day, it's really up to each individual person. Benjamin and his team can design an amazing product and amazing processes to try to prevent, systemic racism from happening. But at the end of the day, people make individual decisions. And if someone, unfortunately has views that are, think that people of a certain race or of a certain gender are different and inferior to them, no process that we design or program we design is going to change their views. So we have to work on changing those views that each of us have, the implicit biases that we have that cause us to act in ways that aren't always considered and beneficial to everyone.
Very interesting.
Absolutely. And there was actually a question asked about because the point you just made about implicit bias is a question that was asked about what's the role design can play in making tech platforms accessible. Really, to jump in on this, I believe that the role that design plays is, whenever we're building products and services, we like to embrace a human-centered design process. We pick a human with a problem, and then we research, we iterate, we prototype with them, and then the cycle continues. And the problem that we often end up with in tech platforms is that we rarely question which human do we place at the center of this human-centered process. So our own implicit biases lends us to place people who we believe look or think like us. And then we end up iterating for people like us and prototyping with people like us. And so we never take a moment to pause, ask what are the biases, what are the defaults that we're designing for? Who are we missing from this process? And that to me is where the core strength of design is that we are the ones, of course there are additional functions like research, but we're the ones who really champion user-centered approaches. And it is incumbent upon us, and it is our responsibility to ensure that we are continually widening the number and the variation of humans that we build for and with every step of the process.
I couldn't agree more with that. Two things you mentioned. The first one was the idea that, you need to make sure there's the human-centered design and then there is the representation. And for me, I'll tell you about my experience. We from early on, we knew that the Team TechFugees could only be made from people that were locals and refugees. Refugees being people with refugee status having the refugee journey. And it was hard for us at the beginning to find the very people that we wanted, because we didn't want to take a refugee to be on our board, to be an image. We wanted to be someone that had the skill of getting on the super small team with no money, and that's you have to be able to afford as a person who's lost everything to be working for a charity with no money, But since we are able to pay everyone on the team, we've had many more people with refugee status, and I can tell you, the quality of our work is gone levels much, much higher, and they've been able to address the systemic, I wouldn't say racism, but systemic blind spots of the way we were doing our work. So point one, representation is a bare minimum within your teams, not just within your boards. And the second thing about the human-centered design, we have a problem on our team is we have too many women and we suffer from this. We need more men. But the way we design everything is too like female focused. And so we realized that our biases were towards female first. And the second thing we do when we do technology with refugees, and that will maybe talk for, you'll learn something today from us, is most of the people we serve are living in countries that are not democracies. And so when they go online, they don't feel it's a safe space and a democratic space. They are feeling watched, and they don't use the internet the same way. They're not going to express themselves like we do on Facebook and Twitter. Not at all. And just to think this makes you think very differently on the way you're going to build technology for them and extract data from them, if you ever extract data. Because if you've been persecuted for religious thoughts, for political thoughts, you're definitely not going to build a tool that asks for what's your religion or what's your political status, whatever. So we have biases, and the biggest step we can take is to be very conscious of them.
There's a question that is interesting. It's from Laura. She says, if it comes back to individual, is there then something to do in terms of awareness? And I think, about like identifying those biases. How do you teach your teams to do so and to be able to know them and to fight them? Is there any tools you use? How do you do that?
Yes, I'm actually building out inclusive design training at Airbnb. And so one of the simplest tools that I have is a question. And that question is, who are we missing? And it is something really simple that you can do, and any member of your team can ask at any point of the creation process. Because if you say, who are we missing, it is implicitly forcing you to focus upon the people who are not your default user group. And you can start off by just making lists. Like, have we thought about the needs of displaced individuals? Have we thought about the needs of Black people, white people, of women, of those with physical or cognitive constraints? By being better able to recognize who you are excluding, it tells you what your biases actually are, that you're defaulting to a specific group. And so that question I love having, because it's lightweight, it's easy, it's something that anyone can ask, but it forces you to actually confront a bias and then gives you a roadmap towards finding the people who you should be speaking with and working with as you build products.
Great. We have a few seconds left.
I just shared a link, and I'd encourage anyone who wants to get a better sense of what their biases are to take it and share it with your colleagues and friends, just to get a base level understanding of what biases you may bring to the table.
Amazing. I'm sorry, time is up. It was an amazing talk. I was so happy to talk about everything with you. Let's keep the conversation going, maybe on social, because I think it's absolutely necessary to talk about those subjects. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. Thank you to our audience who was very reactive, and have a very nice evening or day, depending on where you are in the world. Bye.
Thank you
very much, everyone.
Bye.